Hello everybody, welcome to our third mini PK class for Mirabella. My name is Sara Kelly. I am Mirabella's National Education Manager and in-house makeup artist and esthetician. As you can see, I do not have foundation, concealer, powder, any of that on today. So we're going to be covering complexion products today, and after I go through our options, I am going to show you how I like to apply my foundation and my concealer. So that is why I look like this today. And you're also getting my natural hair, which is a unique experience as well. So anyway, if you have not watched any of our other live videos, just to give you a quick rundown of what we're doing, I'm breaking the line down into small segments. So we've kind of grouped it by product category. That way, we're not blasting a whole bunch of information at you guys. It's a little bit easier for you to comprehend what's going on. And then that gives us a little bit more of an opportunity to let you guys ask questions and then answer them. So we do have some people on answering questions. So if you have something, go ahead and type it below and they'll answer that question for you. If it's something that they don't get to, I do get on myself after the video and answer questions as well. So like I said, we're breaking the line up. Today is complexion products. So I will be going through our 4 foundation options and then our concealers. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, I did not put anything on today. I have properly prepped my skin though. And I've already talked about how to prep the skin and what we have to offer for skin prep products in a prior video. So definitely scroll down in the feed and find that if you're curious. So I did use the skincare system and then prepped with our primers as well. I do have on my eyebrows and a teeny bit of eye makeup. I usually do those 2 things prior to foundation, just in case there's any fallout that I need to clean up. But other than that, I am makeup free. So I'm going to dive right into the foundation formulas. Like I said, we have 4. And the first one I want to talk about is our Invincible. This is our newest foundation. It is also our best selling foundation. If you've watched any of my videos prior, it is always what I have on. This is an HD foundation. So really fantastic for video, for photography. So that is why I always choose this formula if I'm going to be doing a video or having my picture taken. Same thing for my clients. If I do bridal or prom, if somebody's having headshots taken, I'm always using the Invincible. So I'll give you guys a few little details about it, but since I did mention HD already, for those of you that don't know, the way that HD products work, there's kind of 2 components, especially when you're talking about an HD foundation. The pigment particles are a little bit smaller than what you find in traditional foundations, but more than that, they have a special coating on them. So what happens is when light hits the skin, that light is bounced back but diffused, right? So when you're talking about traditional foundation formulas, or even me right now without foundation on, what happens is that light hits our skin and it is directly reflected back, which means if you have, you know, a divot, a pore, a wrinkle, something like that, when the light hits it and it goes into that divot, it's directly reflected back. And your eye detects the difference between the smooth surface and then the divot. So that's why we can see imperfections on the skin. The HD goes into that little imperfection, but the coating on those particles diffuses light. So when light hits it, it blurs all of those imperfections. So the skin looks perfected. You don't see those imperfections as much. So that is why it's really, really great if you're going to be on camera or if you're being filmed. So Invincible HD foundation. This is also an anti-aging foundation, which we all want that. No matter what age you are, you can totally benefit from anti-aging ingredients. So the cool thing that's in this that gives it that anti-aging property is a peptide complex called Matrixyl 3000. So you can Google it. It's been around for a while. There are clinical studies on it that do prove that it works. If you do look at our ingredient list, though, those peptides are listed out individually. So just know that the peptides together make up the complex Matrixyl 3000. So we do have clinical studies that show improvement with continued use of the product. So not only are you getting makeup, so you're getting coverage, but you are actually getting improvement in the skin, which is fantastic. So just to tell you guys what those clinical trials show, we have 98% of people saw improvement in the appearance of fine lines, 95% saw smoother, brighter, more even skin tone, and then 95% saw an increased appearance in skin elasticity. So really, really awesome. In addition, this guy has some hydrating properties to it. It does have glycerin, which is a humectant, so it's going to pull water from the air, bind it to our skin. So if you're somebody that maybe has some dry patches or flaky patches, it will assist with that. But the cool thing about this is that it gives a demi matte finish. So it's not going to be super matte where it's kind of that chalky look, and it's not going to be really, really shiny. So it helps kind of matte excess oil, but you get just a really nice glow with it. And that is another reason why it's really great for film. This is good for all skin types, so anybody can use this. So once I get finished talking about the products, Invincible is the one that I'm going to demo for you guys, so you can see the techniques that I like to use and how I apply on myself and clients. All right, so that is the first of our liquid formulas. So we do have 3 liquid foundations and 1 powder foundation, and I will cover all of those. So the next foundation I want to talk about is our CC cream, and it is CC cream Defense. What the Defense means is that this has sun protection. So it does have an SPF 20, which is really fantastic. It is the only foundation formula we make that has sunscreen in it. So if you are someone that you do not like to apply sunscreen, you know, under your makeup, you're going to want to go to the Defense. So I definitely recommend everybody use sunscreen daily. I know that some of you don't like to do that. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop product, that is going to be the CC cream. This product is really fantastic. It is good for all skin types as well. So to give you a little ingredient rundown, this guy does a ton, so hang in there. It is anti-inflammatory, so it has bamboo extract, lavender, and squalene in it. It is antioxidant, so you get some antioxidant protection in there. Humectant, so it has sodium hyaluronate, which, like I mentioned with the glycerin, is what binds water to our skin. Moisturizing, so we have avocado oil, cabbage rose extract, squalane, vitamin E. We have titanium dioxide, which is where you get the sun defense, which is awesome. So that means it's a physical sunscreen, not a chemical sunscreen. A lot of people that maybe have an allergy to sunscreens or sensitivity to sunscreens, it's typically because it's a chemical-based sunscreen. So we're using titanium dioxide, which is a mineral, which is a physical sunblock. And then the really cool thing about this is that it does have oil control in it. So if you are someone that is oily, this is going to be a great option for you. It has salicylic acid in it and witch hazel. So I will say if you're somebody that's really, really dry, you have flaky patches, you might want to do a patch test with this guy or maybe try it for a few days and see how your skin responds. Most people are completely fine with it, especially because it has those anti-inflammatories. But if you are prone to being dry or sensitive, that salicylic acid or the witch hazel might get you a little bit. But what I find is that a lot of people will use the Defense in the summertime. And then when they're not outside as much, or maybe when their skin gets a little bit drier with the weather change, they'll switch to the Invincible. Both of these formulas are full coverage. Okay, so you're going to get really nice airbrush finish with them. You're going to get full coverage. So both of those, if you want that full coverage, I would suggest one of these, okay? The other cool thing about the Defense, when you pump it out, you might see that there are tiny little beads in it. Those are vitamin E beads. So when you go to apply it on the skin, the beads burst. They blend in with the foundation, so you don't have anything you're like brushing off or, you know, that's flaking off. But what that does is it keeps that vitamin E in the capsule until it's time to use it. So when it releases on the skin, it creates a really nice, luxurious application. It feels really, really creamy. It blends really nicely on the skin. So that is what those little beads are. So I do recommend if you're a retailer or you're a pro artist, if you're somebody that is selling the product, just educate your clients on what those beads are so that they understand when they're seeing that in the formula that it's supposed to be that way. Okay? All right. So that is our second formulation, the CC Cream Defense. And you'll see the packaging on both of these looks very similar. CC is always going to be in this white bottle. These are airless pumps. So you can kind of see here, this one's being used a little bit. So the bottom of this raises up so that you end up using all the product, which is great. So we've gotten away from some of our older bottles. Just to show you guys, we used to have some glass bottles that look like this. We had some squeeze tubes for the CC cream, and one of the biggest complaints was that people couldn't get all of the product out of it. So we have moved everything to these airless pumps, so it's really great because you don't have waste the way that you did with the prior packaging. Okie doke. So, like I said, 3 liquid foundation formulas. We've gone over the first 2. The Invincible is the HD Anti-Aging Foundation. The Defense is the CC Cream Full Coverage Foundation with sunscreen. And then the last option is Skin Tint. And I apologize because I do not have a bottle of that on me. Since we are still on lockdown here, I am obviously at home. And I didn't have a Skin Tint in my kit to show you guys. The bottle does look like the Invincible bottle, but the collar right here is going to be gold, and then it will obviously say Skin Tint on it. So same packaging as the other 2 foundations, just a couple little differing details. The cool thing about Skin Tint is that it is a medium coverage foundation. So where the other 2 are full coverage, this one's going to be a little bit lighter. So when you pump them out, if you were to compare the formulas, the Skin Tint is going to be a little bit more liquidy. And so it's a little bit thinner. It's almost a cross between like a liquid gel texture. So for those of you that don't want a full coverage foundation, the Skin Tint is a fantastic option. Skin Tint is my go-to for people with really sensitive skin, people with active acne, people with rosacea, because it has the highest dose of anti-inflammatories in it compared to our other 2 formulas. So it does have allantoin and squalane in it for anti-inflammatory purposes. It has sodium hyaluronate, which is that humectant, and then it has some squalane, which helps with moisturizing. So it is really good for people that have redness. I will say, though, that sometimes people want the Skin Tint because they have a lot of redness in their skin, but yet they want full coverage. You can absolutely get full coverage with Skin Tint. It just takes a little bit of work. So you want to put it on, let it sit for a second, and then go back in the areas where you need more coverage and put on another thin layer. So it's totally buildable. Okay, so you can get full coverage with it. Also, since we're talking about that, if you wanted to use the CC or the Invincible, but you did not want that full of coverage, I like to shear these out by either adding a couple drops of our Awaken Primer or by adding a little bit of our Renew Moisturizer. So you can add either one of those to the full coverage foundations, mix it up, and then it will shear out that formula a little bit. Okay, so you still get the benefits of either one of those products, but you don't have that super full coverage. Okay, so like I mentioned, 3 liquid foundations, 1 powder. I am going to apologize because my powder foundation is very dinged up. Again, I don't have one of these in my kit on me. They're all at the studio, at the office. So this is my personal one, which has been in my purse and in my drawer, so it's gotten knocked around a little. But this is our powder foundation. This is called Pure Press. I'm not going to show you inside the compact because I've almost used all of it, but I will say there is under here, so if I can do this. So this is the part that has your powder in it. Underneath, there's a little compartment here. When you purchase the powder, it comes with a sponge. You always want to store the sponge in this compartment. Never, ever set it on top of your powder in here, okay? So the sponge is totally fine to use on yourself, but you do want to make sure to wash that sponge from time to time, and you do not want to share this with anybody else. So for any products in which, you know, you're using them from a compact or it's a lipstick, mascara, things like that, make sure you are not sharing those products with anybody, okay? So like I mentioned in the first video earlier this week, on the 20th of May, I will be doing a sanitation class for pros. Consumers are totally fine to watch it as well. I think it's great that we're all informed, especially with everything going on right now. So definitely feel free to watch that. And so the tips will be a little bit different for professionals. So if you're a consumer and you're using this at home, You definitely can use that sponge on yourself. If you're a pro, I really recommend taking the sponge out because that's not something that you can use on multiple people. So I just take the sponge out of any of the compacts that are in my kit, okay? Or that I'm going to use during applications. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about that, this powder is really, really awesome. So it is a powder foundation. You can also use it as a setting powder if you want, but it does have really fantastic coverage. And one of the reasons for that is that this powder is triple milled. So if you don't know what that means, when a powder is triple milled, it means that the particles are ground up really, really fine. So the pigment in the powder, when you go to apply it, because it is triple milled and the particles are so fine, it creates this really nice web of pigment on the skin. All right, and that allows it to flex with the skin. So as you talk, as you move, as you make expressions, the powder is going to shift and move with your face. Which means that you get really great coverage without it looking cakey, without it budging. This is a water resistant product. It's not waterproof, so you can't go in the shower and scrub on your face and have it still be there. I get that question all the time, so I know it sounds ridiculous that I said that, but totally true. You could get sprinkled on with the rain or something like that, and you're going to be fine, okay? So water resistant. And the reason it is water resistant is because that triple milling. So since it makes that really nice web of pigment, you're not going to get it disrupted whenever it gets wet a little bit. So another thing with the triple milling, if you think of a jar full of pebbles, okay, and you hold it up to the sun can still come through where there's little spaces between the pebbles, right? But then you take a jar of sand and you hold that up to the light and you're not seeing any light through. So that's a great analogy to a triple milled powder, which would be the sand, versus something else, which would be the pebbles. Okay, so that's why you're getting such great coverage with this. So this does also have some mica in it, which is light diffusing, which helps blur all those imperfections. It is moisturizing for a powder, which is really nice. So for those of you that have dry skin, I think sometimes we just naturally shy away from powders, but this one does have a powder form of jojoba and it has triglyceride in it. So it is going to lay really nicely on the skin, even if you are dry. And then you have your antioxidants in here. So you have vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin E. So really great ingredients, really fantastic product. So like I said, this can be a foundation that you can apply all by itself. So if I was going to wear this only, I would come in with the kabuki brush, put it on right on top of my skincare or my primer. You can also use it on top of the liquid foundation. So it really depends on what kind of look you're going for and what type of coverage you want. I will say on most clients, especially if I am doing makeup for a special occasion, I will use the Pure Press on top of a liquid foundation. One of the questions I get with the Pure Press is if there is flashback with it. I have never experienced that. It is not a white kind of opaque powder, which is usually what you're seeing when you get flashback with photography. So I've not experienced that with the Pure Press at all. So you should be totally fine to use it for flash photography if you need to. Okay, so I have talked about our 4 foundation formulas. To give you guys a little bit of pricing information, the Invincible, which is the anti-aging foundation, the HD foundation, that is $50. The Defense and the Skin Tint are $42 retail. And then the Pure Press is $39. So all very reasonably priced. I will say the liquid formulas, especially this Invincible, a little bit goes a long way. Okay, so people, see it, and because this is an airless package, they're like, oh, there's maybe not so much in there. No, there's a ton of product in here, guys, and this will last a really long time. If you are new to our foundations and you do invest in one, I suggest pumping out way less than you think you need, because when you go to a professional product versus something at the drugstore, they're always more heavily pigmented and they're formulated to perform really well with less product, which is one of the advantages of going with professional makeup over a drugstore brand, okay? So if you're used to using something from a drugstore, you're probably using more foundation than you were going to need with one of our formulas. So just go easy on the pump when you first start trying it out. You can always pump out more if you need it, but that way you guys aren't wasting it, because I guarantee you won't need as much as you're used to, okay? All right, so that covers our foundation formulas. The last product I'm going to talk about today before I put a little bit of makeup on myself is our Perfecting Concealer. So they are in a stick formula, which is really great. We used to have an older version that was a liquid in a tube with a little kind of spongy applicator. You know, that formula was great. However, the biggest complaint we got is that people could not get the amount of coverage that they wanted. So we have gone to a stick formula. And just like some of our other products, we worked really hard in the packaging. So you guys can see the little circles right here. So any of our face products, you will see on the cartons for the product, and then on some of the actual products themselves, face will have a little circle. Lips will have lips. It's really neat. We've done a lot of cool stuff with the packaging, so super, super cute. So this is a stick formula. It has pretty heavy coverage, which is nice, but it's very easy to blend out. You can sheer it out if you don't need a ton of coverage, but they also make really great cream contour and highlight colors if you like to do that technique for your makeup. So really, really good for multiple uses. It is crease resistant. I will say, if someone ever comes to me and they're complaining about creasing under the eyes especially, and they can't figure out what's going on, it is probably because you're using too much product. I know we all see on social media, YouTube, people doing this giant triangle of concealer under their eye. That typically is far too much product than the average person needs. That technique is fine if you're going to be on camera and you really want to illuminate the entire under eye area. However, if you're just trying to cover some of these little circles, you really just need that concealer right where you're dark, okay? So typically when we get circles, or even if you have a blemish or something like that, what you're doing is trying to conceal only that spot, all right? So what people come in and do, one of the biggest mistakes is they take this concealer, they just coat it under here, blend it out, it looks great for a little bit, and then after a couple hours, they're like, well, it's creasing. You put way too much product on the skin, okay? So keep that in mind. If you have that issue, play with the amount that you're using, play with your technique, because I guarantee you don't need that much concealer if you're finding that it's creasing a lot, okay? All right. Oh, and these are 18. I don't think I mentioned that. So now that I've covered all of our foundations and the concealer, I'm going to show you guys how I like to apply my foundation and what brushes I use and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and pin my crazy hair back here so that it's not in the way, and then show you guys what I do on a typical day when I'm doing my foundation. So like I said, I'm going to use the Invincible. That is almost always what I use day in, day out, especially when I'm doing these videos. It is my favorite. I just think that it lays really nicely on the skin. I personally mix two colors, and I find that I do this a lot on clients as well. So if you are a pro and you retail these products, you know, color match, do your streaks on the cheek and the jawline to see what looks good. If someone's between two colors, I really suggest that you sell both to them. I know it's a little bit more of an investment up front. However, double the product means it will last twice as long, right? And then you have a happier client because you have something that is custom mixed for them. So I'm pretty fair, but I do have a lot of redness in the skin. That's just genetic for me. So I like to use the 0 because I am so fair, but I put a little bit of number 1, which is the ivory in it. For someone that has skin kind of like mine that maybe doesn't have that redness, I would do a 2. So you kind of have to play with it, but when there's redness in the skin, I like to add a bit of a beige-based foundation in. The yellow in those foundations will help counteract the redness in the skin, right? So I mix these two. I am going to go ahead and pump them out onto my little palette here and then mix them with a brush, and we'll get to applying so that you guys can see how I like to do this. If you've ever taken a class with me or watched any of the videos in which I've done some application, you'll see that I use this technique most often. If you go back and watch some of our previous videos, I explain why I love stippling, and I'll kind of talk about that here as well. So I have pumped the two colors here. I'm going to use our flat foundation brush and mix those together. I like the flat foundation brush for this because it is a stiffer bristle brush, and because it's flat, I'm not getting a lot of the product soaking into the center of the brush where I'm wasting it, okay? And when I apply, I do actually use two brushes to do that. If you're doing this at home, you can definitely take the foundation and use your finger, dot it on the face to distribute the product, and then come in with a brush. I just am used to using the flat foundation brush. So you can see here, I've got a little bit just on the tip, and I'm gonna come in and just put some basically streaks on the skin. I'm gonna pat it under my eye a little bit. So one of the reasons I recommend getting product on the skin before you start stippling it is because when you come in with your stipple brush, if you have a lot of product, like if you took this brush, for instance, picked up your foundation and went straight to the face, what's going to happen? You're going to have it built up in the center of the brush. It's not going to apply right, and you're going to cake this up where your brush won't work properly, okay? So that is why I come in with the flat foundation brush first, and I work in sections. So you can see I've sort of done just this half of my face. So I've gotten the product on. Then I'm coming in with our sculpting foundation and contour brush. So really dense bristles. This mimics a sponge. And then I'm going to stipple. Okay, so I talked about stippling the other day. And the reason I do this, especially if you're someone like me where you want to get full coverage, maybe you have some skin issues, you have a little bit of scarring or pigmentation you want to cover up, the last thing you want to do is come in and do this, because guess what? You're shifting the product away from the areas in which you need it, right? So you're just pushing this into the skin. And this is gentle, guys. You're not really hard with it, but you should feel it. I mean, you want to work that into the skin really, really well. Make sure you come over here by the ear and then bring it down to the neck as well. Okay. So you can kind of see it took that redness down. See how much redness I have in the skin? I've done this half, and look how nice that covered, right? And this is that HD foundation, so it's giving a really nice glow, really pretty coverage. It's demi matte, so it's not super shiny, but it's not chalky either, okay? All right, so I'm gonna come in and do this half. Like I said, I use my flat foundation brush to distribute the product first. Doing it this way will also preserve the life of your stippling brush. Like I said, because it's not caking foundation in the center here, right? You're getting the product on the skin, then you're using this to get that really nice finish. So people ask me why I streak downward on the face like this. Again, you're using light pressure here. You're not using a ton of pressure, so you're not tugging on the skin. But I go downward because we all have those little tiny vellus hairs all over our face. And I like to do this to help that hair lay down, right? So that it's not sticking up, catching the light, making the skin, you know, look a little less smooth. Brushing it down helps with those vellus hairs. Okay, get a little bit more, come down onto the neck. And then I'm coming in with my stipple brush and tapping that into the skin. So this is going to be a little bit of a different technique for some of you. I know a lot of people like to buff, and that's totally okay if that's your thing. I will say I would choose a different brush if that's what you're doing. The bristles on this are very dense, and so it is designed to be a stipple brush. But look how nice that's making the skin look already, right? And you can probably tell I really did do a pretty thin layer of it. I didn't put a ton on the skin. I started with maybe like half a pump of each of those colors that I chose. And I still have a little bit left here so I can come in and do the forehead. Okay, so you can see like the nice sort of sheen, but it's not like oily looking. Once this dries, it's going to matte down just a little bit. Make sure you get over by the ear and then blend that down into the neck. Okay, I'm going to take what's left of this. We're going to come in and do the forehead. Looks like I need a little bit more, so bear with me. I'm going to pump just a teeny bit more out here, mix that up. Another little tip, I do my foundation prior to concealer. I know that some people do concealer first, and that is totally fine if that's what works for you. I do it in that order because I think it conserves product. So if you are doing your foundation first, you can get a lot of coverage with the foundation only, right? And then you come back in with the concealer and only use it where it's needed. So if you're doing concealer first, that's totally fine. But you might find that if you switch it up, you'd use less product. So give that a whirl if you have not tried that before. Okay. Forehead's a little bit trickier. Like I said, I always do my eye makeup and my eyebrows first. So I'm just kind of coming around my eyebrows here. And for those of you that have never tried to do your makeup on video, it is completely different than doing it in a mirror. So thank you for bearing with me here. There's a teeny time delay, so it's a little bit hard to see what I'm doing. So I am coming between the brows here too. You don't want to forget that. Okay, so I've got it on, but to perfect that finish, I'm going to come in sculpting foundation contour brush, and I'm going to stipple that in. Make sure you get up into that hairline so you don't have a weird line of demarcation, and then just stipple and push that product into the skin. Okay, so sometimes when I come up here in the hairline, I will sort of buff that a little bit, just to make sure that everything is blended in. Other than that, though, I'm only stippling with this brush. Okay, so I've about got everything done here. I usually don't apply a ton of foundation directly to the nose. I think that's kind of a mistake that people make. They'll come in, put a streak of foundation on the nose. When you go to blend it out, you have way too much product there. And the nose is a place that makes excess oil throughout the day. Maybe you're touching it a lot if you have a runny nose or allergies or something. So foundation tends to shift around a lot on the nose, and especially if you've put too much product. So I usually just take kind of what's left on my brush and come over my nose. I really love this brush with the slant. You can take this kind of tip right here or the point and come into those nose creases, right? Because we all know sometimes if you're not careful, foundation can gather there, and then you'll end up getting a little bit of creasiness throughout the day. So I like to work that tip of the brush into those little nose creases there. Okay, so what I do after I've done my full face of foundation, if I have a little left, I come back and I actually conceal under my eyes with the foundation first. I like this because you can use a little bit of a wider surface. How I mentioned with concealer earlier, you don't want to just crayon that all up under your eye. I like doing that highlighting technique with my foundation first before I do any concealer, because it's the same texture and consistency as my foundation. It's the exact same color, right? And it's usually a little bit sheerer than a concealer. So I do that first so that everything blends really, really nicely. You don't have a ton of product under the eye. Then I'll come in with the concealer right where it's needed. Okay. All right, guys. So really nice, pretty coverage. A nice finish. Now keep in mind, I don't have any powder or anything yet, but we're going to go in with the concealer. Like I said, if you're just tuning in, I use the Invincible foundation in flat foundation brush to distribute on the face, and then sculpting foundation and contour brush to stipple that onto the skin. Okay, so now I'm going to use a little bit of the concealer. If you are at home, you can go directly to the skin with this if it is your own personal product. This one is from my kit, so I'm going to scrape what I need off and put it on a palette or work right from the stick, okay? All right, so I am just going to use a little bit of this under my eyes, and then any kind of additional, I've had a little bit of breaking out from quarantine. I'm sure some of you are experiencing that, stress and just different sleep patterns and things like that. So I got a little bit of that to cover up, but not too much because that Invincible really does a great job. Okay, so I have scraped the concealer onto my palette here, and I am using our Perfecting concealer brush. If you're curious about the brushes, I recommend you go back and watch the video that I did on Tuesday. I went through every single brush telling you what I use them for, why they're great. So if you have questions, go back and watch that video, and then you can also leave us questions below. But for my concealer, I'm using the Perfecting concealer brush. It is pretty wide, so you're able to cover a large area in one swoop, and then it has this really nice point on it for detailed work. So I've picked up a little bit of the concealer with that brush, and you can see I have a little bit of dark circling here. So I'm just going to apply that concealer right where that dark circle is. Okay. And again, thank you for bearing with me. It is definitely different doing this on video than in a mirror. So I might be fumbling a little bit, but we're trying to get there. Okay, so I'm using the point of this brush just to put that concealer right over the darkness of my eye. And then I'm going to pat it in. So when you're talking about concealing, especially under eye circles, the reason we have circles is because the skin is not perfectly flat or smooth there. So when light hits it, it's reflecting back differently. So for most of us, when we have circles, the reason you see that is because there's actually a divot in the skin. So you might be puffy right here, and then you have a divot. So it creates a shadow, right? So that's why you want to put the concealer only where that shadow is, because it's going to brighten and push that forward so it looks even with the rest of the skin under the eye, okay? That's the same concept for highlighting and contouring the face also, is either pushing something back or bringing it forward. When you're using something that's a little bit of a lighter color, it's going to bring that forward, which is why I'm just putting that concealer right where that under eye circle is, so that it looks like it's bringing it forward and that it's a little bit smoother with the rest of my under eye skin. Okay. Now I will say concealer can do some wonders. However, makeup can't take away texture on the skin. So keep that in mind and be gentle with yourself. I think we're all our hardest critics when we're looking at things maybe we don't like on our face or that we wish were different. It's not a matter of, you know, you can't do your makeup right or whatever. There's texture on the skin. There's supposed to be texture on the skin. Everything's not supposed to be perfectly smooth. So, you know, do what you can and then give yourself a little bit of grace, all right? So I've concealed this, but I still have a not smooth area under my eye. So you're still going to see a little bit of that, and that's okay. I mean, that's real life, right? Okay, so I have a little bit more concealer here. I'm just going to come in where I have a little bit of extra redness from some old scarring. Blend that out. Come back in with my stipple brush. This is my absolute favorite, you guys. So if you invest in any of our foundations or even our concealer, I really, really recommend this. Okay, got a couple little spots over here. And again, I love the little point of this brush because you can get just right on that spot that you want to conceal. I'm kind of blowing it out a little bit so that it blends in with the surrounding area, but there we go. Perfect. Okay, so that is all I'm going to do as far as foundation and concealer goes. But I am going to come in with a little bit of the Pure Press. So for those of you that want a little extra coverage, that maybe you want to matte this down a little bit, come in with the Pure Press on top of your liquid foundation, on top of your concealer. I'm going to use the kabuki brush, swirl it around on here, and then the technique I like to use, especially if I'm applying this on top of foundation, like I just did all this work, right, to get this really nice finish, to get the coverage how I wanted it. So the last thing I want to do, again, is come in, buff around on top of it, and shift it around. So I've loaded this with quite a bit of powder, and I'm going to stipple it on the skin. So I'm going to do this. Okay? And look how pretty that is. So you can tell a difference. I got a little shine here, and this is matted out a little bit more. And it just adds some extra coverage. So I'm a huge fan of stippling. Everybody does not have to do that. That's just what I found over the years works really great with most skin types to get a really nice airbrush finish and to get really good coverage. So again, I'm just stippling this in. I love the kabuki because it's so soft. And it is, you can tell, look how big that brush is, right? So it makes quick work of applying the product because you're able to cover such a large area in one go. Okay, I'm just going to stipple that on my forehead too. So you can see that's taking that shine down. But again, it's not super matte. There's still a little bit of a glow there, which I think is really fantastic. Okay, a little bit on the chin. I think we kind of forget our top lip sometimes. So I love Pure Press for that. I keep one in my purse, and so throughout the day, if I need to touch up, especially during allergy season, I feel like this area is always kind of red and it looks a little bit muddled. The Pure Press is fantastic for touching up for that throughout the day. Okay, I am almost done here, guys. And then I always come down here, kind of sweep and make sure everything is nice and blended. If you have a little bit of extra powder on your brush, sorry guys, got a little hair there, I will come in and I'll actually put that on my chest and my neck too, just to blend everything together and so that I'm not wasting that product. Okay, so there you have it. I obviously don't have on any face color or lip products, but you can totally see the difference in my skin between now and the beginning of the video. So I hope you guys learned something. If you have questions, definitely feel free to drop them below and we will answer those for you guys. And then tune back in next week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. This week we got a little off and we did Monday, Tuesday, Friday, but it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. We're going to still be breaking down the line. I'm going to start Monday talking about face color and finishing powders. So I'll do a little bit more application. With that, we will talk about a couple of our finishing powder options, our sculpt duos, and our blush duos. And I'll show you guys some tips and tricks with those as well. So anyway, I hope you learned something. Like I said, if you have questions, drop them below. I will get on after this live video and answer those questions. I hope you tune in next week, and I hope everybody's hanging in there and doing well. So we will see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.